We were supposed to be perfect together. Everyone said we were a match made in heaven. But slowly, the cracks began to show. Arguments over little things became frequent: what to eat, where to go, even how he left his shoes in the living room. I ignored them at first, telling myself love requires patience. But the tension kept growing. I noticed secrets he kept from me, subtle excuses, and a coldness in his eyes I could no longer ignore. He would smile, but it never reached him. I blamed myself for everything. Was I too demanding, too emotional, too weak? I replayed every conversation, analyzing my words, my actions, trying to figure out what went wrong. Yet, deep down, I felt something slipping away. The man I thought I knew was changing, and I didn't know how to reach him anymore. Nights became heavy, filled with unspoken words and uncomfortable silences. I wanted to fix us, to hold on to what we had, but I couldn't deny the growing distance. Something fundamental had shifted, and I feared I might lose him forever. At first, it was just a few late nights. Then it became a pattern. He came home later and later, often with tired eyes and forced smiles. His phone seemed glued to his hand, buzzing constantly, and when I asked about it, he said it was work. I wanted to believe him, desperately. I wanted to trust him. But my gut told me otherwise. Something about the way he avoided my gaze, the subtle tension in his shoulders, made me uneasy. I started noticing little inconsistencies in his stories. Where he said he'd been, the time he claimed he'd left the office, it never quite added up. I found myself waiting for him to come home, heart racing, silently hoping to catch a glimpse of the truth. And every time I tried to confront him, a part of me hoped it was nothing, maybe exhaustion, maybe stress, maybe just me overthinking. But deep down, I knew something was off. My trust was cracking, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. The man I loved seemed to be slipping through my fingers. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible. A misdirection, a story that didn't match reality, a glance too quick, a hesitation too long. The day I caught him lying, my chest sank. The man I loved, the man I trusted, had started keeping pieces of his life from me. I asked him where he'd been that evening, and his story didn't make sense. His eyes darted, his voice faltered, and suddenly, everything I thought I knew felt like a lie. I confronted him, heart pounding, words spilling out faster than I could catch them. His response? Dismissal. He made me feel guilty for questioning him. I felt my confidence crumble, my mind spinning. How could someone I loved so deeply deceive me with such ease? I wondered if I had missed the signs, the subtle hints that something was wrong. My trust, once solid, now felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter. And the worst part? I still loved him, even as I realized the truth. It was a name I had never heard before, appearing repeatedly on his phone. I stared at it, heart racing, stomach twisting. One text caught my eye: "Can't wait to see you." My hands trembled. My world fell silent around me. She existed in the same space he used to fill with love for me. The betrayal wasn't just in the act, it was in the frequency, the constancy. He had built another world, and I wasn't part of it. I wanted to scream, to break something, to make sense of it all, but I couldn't. Every memory we shared seemed tainted now, every promise hollow. I wondered when it had started, how long he had been investing in her while I remained unaware. A part of me wanted to believe it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. But the truth was undeniable. His attention, his passion, his time, it wasn't mine anymore. I felt invisible, replaced, shattered. The man I had trusted with my heart had chosen someone else, and the pain cut deeper than I could have imagined. I couldn't stay silent any longer. I asked him, my voice trembling, my eyes locked on his. "Is there someone else?" He froze. For a moment, I saw panic flash across his face, but then he spoke, denial. "No, you're imagining things," he said, voice cracking, tears forming in his eyes. He told me I was overthinking, too sensitive, too controlling. But I saw through the facade. The weight in his eyes, the hesitation, the guilt he tried to hide, it all screamed the truth. I knew he was lying. My chest tightened, my stomach churned. How could someone I trusted so completely betray me, and then try to make me question my own reality? I wanted him to admit it, to be honest, to own his actions. But he didn't. And in that moment, I realized the fight I thought we were having wasn't about us, it was about him choosing someone else, quietly, right in front of me. My heart broke, and I knew our world had changed forever. He left. Not for a fight, not for any reason I could comprehend. One evening, he came home with an air of finality I hadn't seen before. His words were careful, rehearsed, and yet hollow. I can't do this anymore. I found someone else. My heart froze mid-beat. Years of love, laughter, shared dreams, all discarded in a single sentence. I stared at him, unable to speak. The woman he chose was someone I'd only seen in passing, a shadow in our social circle. How could he throw away what we had for her? My mind raced through every memory, every promise he had made. He saw my shock, my pain, and yet he remained steadfast. He tried to explain, to make it seem like it was mutual, like he had no choice. But I knew the truth. He had chosen her over me. And as he walked out the door, leaving silence and emptiness in his wake, I felt a strange combination of rage, heartbreak, and disbelief. The life I knew had ended, and I was left behind. For weeks, I drifted through life like a ghost. Every corner of my home screened his absence, the mug he always left on the counter, the jacket still hanging by the door, the bed that felt impossibly empty. I barely ate, barely slept. Friends called, but I couldn't speak. I hated him for leaving, for choosing her, for shattering my world. And yet, beneath the anger, a raw ache lingered. I missed him. Nights were the hardest. I replayed our arguments, our laughter, the promises of forever, and it tore at me. Sometimes, I would pick up my phone, tempted to call, only to put it down and cry instead. I hated that I still loved him, that my heart longed for the man who had hurt me most. Isolation became my comfort and my curse. I wandered through days without meaning, waiting for something to make sense. I told myself I would never forgive him, never trust again. But even in my despair, a tiny spark persisted, a fragile hope that one day, I could rebuild myself from the wreckage he left behind. Slowly, life began to seep back in. I forced myself out of bed, into the sun, into the world. I threw myself into work, seeking accomplishment that was mine alone, untainted by his absence. Friends reached out, and I allowed their warmth to seep through my walls. Hobbies I had neglected became my refuge, each stroke of a paintbrush, each mile run, each book read, helping me stitch together the person I thought I had lost. Some days were harder than others, memories would stab at my chest, and tears would flow in private. But with each passing week, I noticed subtle changes. My laughter returned, tentative at first, then more genuine. My heartache didn't vanish, but it became bearable, a shadow rather than a weight. I realized I had survived the impossible, loving someone deeply and losing them entirely. Each day, I reclaimed a piece of myself, stronger and wiser. I started believing in the possibility of happiness without him, in the idea that I could thrive independently, and that love for myself could be enough. Months turned into a year, and my life began to bloom in ways I never imagined. I traveled to cities I had only dreamed of, tasted cuisines that reminded me life was meant to be savored, and met people who inspired and challenged me. Laughter returned in abundance, unforced, untainted by longing. I learned to flirt again, not out of desperation, but curiosity and joy. The shadow of him still lingered occasionally, a ghost at the edge of my thoughts, but it no longer controlled me. I realized I had been building something far more important than any relationship, my own identity, my own strength. Friends noticed the change, the glow of someone finally reclaiming their life. I didn't need him to define me, to validate me, or to complete me. And yet, I couldn't entirely forget. Memories would sneak in, like a soft whisper, reminding me of what had been, of the love that had once been real. But I had grown, and with growth came a quiet resilience. I was free, and I was ready for whatever came next. Years had passed. Life had moved on, and I had rebuilt every corner of myself. Then, one ordinary afternoon, a notification appeared on my phone. My heart stopped. The message preview read, "Can we talk? I need you." I froze. It was him, the man who had shattered my world, the one who had walked away for someone else, now reaching out. My hands trembled as I opened it, the familiar bubble of anxiety and disbelief rising in my chest. I stared at the words, rereading them, wondering if it was real. Every instinct screamed to ignore it, to delete it, to protect the fragile life I had rebuilt. And yet, curiosity crept in, uninvited but persistent. What did he want after all this time? Why now? A storm of emotions erupted inside me: anger, nostalgia, disbelief, and a lingering spark of old affection. My mind raced with memories, old wounds reopening, and yet a small, dangerous hope flickered. Could he really be sorry? I stared at my phone, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Should I reply, or let him remain a ghost of the past? Friends warned me, ignore him. You've moved on. But my heart argued differently. Part of me needed answers, part of me needed closure, and part of me still remembered the man I once loved. I wrestled with the familiar conflict, desire versus self-preservation. Every scenario ran through my head. What if he truly regretted leaving? What if he wasn't lying this time? And yet, the fear gnawed at me, fear that replying could unravel the careful life I had built, pull me back into a storm I had barely survived. I inhaled, my fingers trembling, and finally typed, "What do you want?" A single line, neutral, yet powerful. I hesitated, rereading it over and over, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. Then I hit send. The message left my hands like a small act of courage or foolishness. Whatever it was, the door had been reopened, and there was no turning back. The past had called, and I had answered. The reply came almost immediately. Words poured out of him like a flood I hadn't anticipated. He admitted everything, the mistakes, the lies, the betrayal. He said she wasn't the one, that leaving me had been the worst decision of his life. Each word hit me like a physical blow. His tone was desperate, trembling with guilt and regret. My hands shook as I read line after line. The man who had destroyed me now begged for forgiveness, for another chance, for understanding. Part of me wanted to feel relief, wanted to believe him, to imagine the love we once had rekindled. But the rational part of me, the part that had survived heartbreak, warned me. Words could be sincere, or they could be manipulation, a desperate attempt to reclaim what he had thrown away. I reread every sentence, searching for honesty, for emotion, for proof. And yet, beneath it all, the truth remained tangled with pain. The man I had loved had caused years of suffering, and now, after everything, he wanted me back. My emotions surged, a storm of anger, nostalgia, and reluctant curiosity. As I sat with his message open before me, memories came rushing back. I remembered the sleepless nights, crying into pillows no one could hear. The holidays spent alone, pretending to be fine while my heart screamed. The betrayal that had cut deeper than any knife could, the long months of rebuilding myself from the ruins he had left. Each memory stabbed, a reminder of how much I had endured. Could I forgive? Could I erase the pain? My emotions twisted like a storm inside me, rage, sorrow, longing, and heartbreak all entangled. I had spent years learning to live without him, reconstructing a life I could be proud of. And now, with a single message, all of it threatened to unravel. I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, trying to steady myself, to find clarity. Flashbacks of laughter now mixed with betrayal, moments of tenderness now shadowed with deceit. I realized that forgiving him would be more than saying okay. It would be allowing someone back into a heart that had learned to protect itself, a heart I wasn't sure could trust again. I finally agreed to meet, but under strict conditions. Only in a public place. I wanted answers, not excuses. I needed to see the man he had become, not the man in my memories. The day arrived, and my stomach churned with anticipation and fear. I prepared myself, rehearsed questions, rehearsed my responses. I reminded myself, I am stronger now, I am cautious, I am not that same person who allowed heartbreak to define me. When he arrived, I studied every detail, the slump of his shoulders, the tension in his hands, the eyes that once held my world. I observed him carefully, silently, gauging sincerity. Every word, every gesture, every hesitation mattered. I wasn't there to be swept away. I was there to reclaim control, to confront the past, and to determine whether the man in front of me had changed, or if he was just trying to rewrite history. My heart thudded in my chest as I faced him. The meeting would determine everything, the past's grip, the present's power, and the possibility of any future together. Seeing him after all these years was like walking through a memory I had tried to forget. My heart raced, yet a chill ran down my spine. He looked older, tired, defeated, but familiar in ways that made my chest ache. The man I had loved, the one who left me for another, was standing right in front of me. His eyes searched mine, hesitant, searching for forgiveness, for understanding, for something I wasn't ready to give. My mind reeled with questions. Why now, after all this time? Did he really regret it, or was this another attempt to reclaim what he lost? The tension was electric, the air thick with years of unspoken pain and longing. I remembered the nights, the arguments, the laughter, the betrayal. And yet, part of me still remembered the love, the warmth, the comfort, the shared dreams. I realized then that the man in front of me was both familiar and foreign, a reminder of the past and a challenge to my present. This meeting would determine whether he remained a ghost of memory or a presence I could never trust again. He took a deep breath, voice trembling as he began to speak. "I made a mistake," he said, eyes downcast, hands fidgeting. He told me everything, the lies, the betrayal, the choices he had made, and the woman he thought he loved. He confessed how she had cheated on him, how he realized too late that the life he walked away from was the life he truly wanted. His voice cracked, each word heavy with regret. I listened, heart pounding, torn between anger and the memory of the man I had loved. He admitted he had thrown away years of love, laughter, and trust. He wanted forgiveness, understanding, a second chance, anything to undo what had been done. I felt my chest tighten, breath shallow, memories flooding back, the nights I cried, the holidays alone, the emptiness that had consumed me. And yet, here he was, standing before me, vulnerable, broken, asking for a life he had abandoned. The weight of his words pressed against me, a mix of sorrow and cautious curiosity. Could the man I once loved ever be worthy of my trust again? I finally spoke, my voice steady but filled with emotion. I told him everything, how deeply he had hurt me, the sleepless nights, the heartbreak that followed, the years I had spent rebuilding myself alone. I didn't hold back. Every memory, every tear, every pang of betrayal was laid bare before him. I wanted him to understand the gravity of what he had done, the depth of the scars he left behind. He listened, head bowed, eyes filled with shame, silence stretching between us. For the first time, I realized I wasn't speaking to manipulate or punish him, I was reclaiming my voice. I had suffered in silence for too long. The pain, the anger, and the heartbreak were mine, and I owed it to myself to confront him fully. As I spoke, I felt a strange release, as if each word chipped away the weight I had carried for years. He nodded, acknowledging his wrongs, but I knew that listening alone would never erase the past. I needed more than apologies, I needed proof that I mattered more than his mistakes. He looked at me, hope flickering in his eyes. "I want you back," he said softly, almost pleading. My chest tightened. Part of me wanted to believe him, to reach across the table and reclaim what we once had. Memories of laughter, shared dreams, and tender moments tugged at my heart. And yet, another part of me remembered the betrayal, the sleepless nights, the long years of rebuilding without him. I realized that forgiving him didn't mean forgetting, and loving him again could make me vulnerable to the same pain. I closed my eyes, weighing the past against my present strength. Could I trust someone who had chosen another over me? Could I allow him back into a heart that had learned to protect itself? I took a deep breath and understood that the choice was mine, but it wasn't simple. This was more than a decision about love, it was about self-respect, boundaries, and acknowledging my own worth. I could let him back into my life, or I could protect myself and honor the growth I had achieved without him. After our meeting, I retreated into solitude. I spent a week reflecting, journaling, and asking myself difficult questions. Could I forgive him fully, or would lingering resentment poison any attempt at reconciliation? Did I deserve a love that might betray me again, or was my heart stronger than I realized? I revisited my past, reliving both the joy and the heartbreak, analyzing every choice I had made. I reminded myself of the months I had spent alone, learning, growing, and thriving without him. Each memory reinforced the resilience I had built, the independence I had fought so hard to reclaim. I realized that forgiving him was not just about him, it was about me, about my capacity to love without losing myself. And yet, self-reflection also revealed my deepest fear, the temptation to return to comfort, to old patterns, even if they carried risk. I knew that my decision had to be deliberate, rooted in clarity rather than emotion. I had learned to protect myself, and now I had to honor that lesson, no matter how much my heart ached. I finally understood my power. I didn't need him. I had spent years rebuilding a life he tried to destroy, cultivating independence, joy, and self-respect. The man who had once held my heart no longer controlled it. I had dreams, ambitions, and friendships that were mine alone, not tied to his presence or approval. The pain he caused had taught me resilience, and I now carried a quiet strength that was unshakable. I realized that the best way to reclaim my life wasn't through him, it was through myself. Each step forward, each choice I made without fear, was a declaration I was no longer the person who waited for someone else to validate her worth. The tables had turned, not through revenge or cruelty, but through empowerment. I could love, trust, and thrive without him. And that was far more satisfying than any apology he could offer. I was finally free, not because of him, but because of me. My life, my happiness, my rules, mine entirely. When we spoke again, I held my ground. He tried, once more, to sway me with apologies, tears, and promises. But I had changed. My heart had healed, and my mind had grown sharper. I looked him in the eyes and said firmly, I can forgive, but I cannot forget. And I won't be the second choice anymore. The words surprised even me, they were a declaration of my strength, my independence. I realized that forgiveness wasn't for him, it was for me, to release the lingering pain and reclaim my power. He listened, a mixture of shame and longing in his gaze, and finally understood that my decision was unyielding. I wasn't bitter, nor cruel, I was resolute. Our conversation ended not with reconciliation, but with clarity. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, the burden of years of heartbreak and doubt replaced by a serene confidence. I had spoken my truth, and it was enough. For the first time, I felt complete, knowing that my happiness no longer depended on someone who once abandoned me. I walked away with my head held high. He cried, begged, and pleaded, but I remained unmoved. Closure wasn't about hearing apologies, it was about reclaiming myself. I realized that I didn't need his recognition of my pain to validate my journey. I had endured heartbreak, betrayal, and abandonment, and I had survived. The closure I saw wasn't in his words or presence, it was in my own ability to release the past and honor my growth. I forgave him in my mind, not for him, but for me, so the shadow of pain wouldn't follow me anymore. As I walked away from our last meeting, a calm spread through me, a profound relief I hadn't expected. The anger, sadness, and longing that had haunted me for years were now replaced by a quiet peace. I understood finally that closure isn't granted, it's claimed. I had claimed it. And as I stepped into the world, the sun warming my face, I felt unburdened, free, and fully myself. I no longer carried the weight of someone else's choices. Months passed, and my life flourished. I focused on my career, cultivating ambition and purpose that were entirely my own. I strengthened friendships, forming bonds with people who lifted and inspired me. Hobbies, long neglected, became daily rituals that grounded me, each brushstroke, workout, or page read a testament to my independence. The pain from the past occasionally whispered, but I no longer allowed it to dominate me. I had control now, over my heart, my choices, and my happiness. I laughed freely, traveled boldly, and embraced opportunities without hesitation. Every day was proof that I could thrive without him, and the freedom was intoxicating. Love for myself had become my foundation, my armor, my joy. I realized that the years of heartbreak were not wasted, they had built resilience, strength, and clarity. My life was full, my mind sharp, my heart open but guarded. I had become the person I was always meant to be, whole, confident, and unapologetically alive. Thriving alone was no longer lonely, it was liberation. He reached out once more, this time with gentle messages, reminders of the past, and tentative attempts at connection. But I smiled politely, a small curve of my lips that carried more power than words ever could. I declined. I didn't feel anger or longing, just a serene detachment. I had built a life without him, and nothing he could say or do would shake that foundation. Seeing him again would have been revisiting a wound I had already healed. I realized that I didn't need closure from him, didn't need his validation or remorse. My life had become a testament to my resilience, independence, and growth. I had chosen myself over old patterns, self-respect over nostalgia. Peace radiated through me, a quiet satisfaction that came from knowing I had the power to control my story. In that moment, I understood fully, some chapters are meant to close with distance, not reconciliation. Walking away from him wasn't loss, it was victory, and I savored the calm triumph of being fully free. I stood on a balcony, sunlight warming my face, feeling the breeze brush past me. I thought of the love that had hurt me, the heartbreak that had shaped me, and the man who had once defined my world. And I smiled. Life had taught me that love can hurt, but it can also teach, transform, and empower. The best revenge wasn't revenge at all, it was thriving, glowing, and living unapologetically without him. I had reclaimed every fragment of myself that he had tried to take. My heart was open, yet protected, my mind clear, yet curious, my spirit free, yet grounded. I breathed deeply, knowing that this was my time. The past no longer had power over me. Each step I took, each decision I made, was a declaration of my strength, my independence, and my worth. I was whole. I was unstoppable. I was alive. And as the sunlight danced across my face, I knew with certainty that my new beginning was brighter than anything I had imagined, shaped not by love lost, but by love reclaimed, for myself.